The November sun cast long shadows through the windows of Michaela Carter's Nashville home as she helped her children with homework at the kitchen table. At 24, her warm smile concealed the constant vigilance that had become second nature. The protection order against her estranged husband James Leggett was just paper, after all, paper that hadn't stopped him before. "Mom, I don't understand this problem," her child said, pointing to a math worksheet. Michaela leaned closer, her braids falling forward as she explained patiently. This ordinary moment, a mother helping with homework on a Monday afternoon, was the kind of peace she fought for daily. The kind that could shatter in an instant. And then it did. The first crack of splintering wood froze her mid-sentence. Her body tensed before her mind could process what was happening. The second impact sent the door frame buckling inward. "Go to your room now," she whispered urgently to her children, her voice steady despite the terror flooding her veins. "Lock the door. Don't come out." With trembling fingers, Michaela and her mum Kimberly Jones Mbuyi grabbed a phone and dialed 911, backing away from the entryway as the door gave way completely. "911, what's your emergency?" "Please help me." Michaela's voice was breathless, desperate. "My husband, he's kicking in my door. He has a gun. He's not supposed to be here. I have an order of protection." The dispatcher's voice remained detached. "What's your address, ma'am?" 1423, Riverwood Drive. "Please hurry." Her words cut short as James Leggett stepped into her home, the metallic glint of a handgun visible at his side. "You called the cops?" His voice was dangerously quiet. The phone still pressed to her ear, Michaela backed further away. "James, please. The children are here." "Ma'am, are you still there?" The dispatcher's voice seemed miles away. "He's in my house," Michaela whispered. "He has a gun. Please hurry."
He's outside walking around with a gun. We have an order of protection against him, and I'm pretty sure he's looking for my daughter because my niece lives in those apartments.
How do you know this person, ma'am?
It's my ex-husband. It's my daughter's husband, estranged husband. He just got out of jail like last week. James Leggett. Are they seven people? Yeah, but they have to ask you how it is.
What is he wearing right now?
We didn't see him, so I'm not sure what he's wearing. He's outside, and I told my niece not to go back out there.
All right, how did you know that he has a gun?
Yeah, he's 6'6". He's a black guy, brown skin, low cut hair. Not low, but it's a little bit of hair. Yeah, he's really tall.
All right, how did you know that he has a gun?
Because they seen him. He's been posting on Facebook, and he's not even supposed to contact my daughter, but he's been sending her crazy messages since 9 o'clock this morning.
So you're not sure that he's outside? Because you haven't seen him, right?
Oh, yes, I'm sure he's outside with a gun.
But did you saw him with a gun?
My niece did. I'm headed over here now, but I'm kind of scared to go.
What's the name of the apartment?
He's outside with the gun.
What happened in the minutes that followed would expose fatal flaws in a system designed to protect women like Michaela. The police response, when it finally came, would be too little, too late. 2 gunshots would echo through the neighborhood, one to her chest, one to her leg. And days later, a family would be planning a funeral instead of celebrating what would have been Michaela's 25th birthday. This is not just another domestic violence statistic. This is the story of a woman whose calls for help went unanswered. A mother whose protection was promised but never delivered. A daughter whose life was cut short by the very failures she had warned about repeatedly. Say her name. Michaela Carter. Welcome to Say Her Name, where we tell the stories of Black women whose cases deserve more attention, whose legacies deserve to be honored, and whose deaths demand accountability. Today, we remember Michaela Carter. Before we continue with Michaela's story, I want to ask you, have you ever witnessed domestic violence in your community? Where are you watching from today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps these important stories reach more people who need to hear them. And kindly support this channel by hitting the subscribe button. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Before the protection orders. Before the fear. Before a system failed her. Let's remember Michaela Carter as she lived. Born on November 23, 1996, in Nashville, Tennessee, Michaela Carter was a woman who defined herself through strength, resilience, and an unwavering love for her family. Raised by her mother, Kimberly Jones Mbuyi, Michaela developed into a warm, kind-hearted individual with a profound sense of purpose. Her education at Antioch High School laid the foundation for a woman who valued independence and fought for those she loved. At just 17, Michaela met James Leggett, who was 5 years her senior. What began as a teenage romance would stretch into a decade-long commitment, culminating in their elopement and marriage in December 2020. As a mother, Michaela discovered a new dimension to her strength. Her children became her world, and she approached motherhood with a fierce protectiveness. Family members often noted how she would go to any length to ensure her children's safety and well-being, a trait that would later drive her to seek legal protection from her increasingly volatile husband. Those kids were her world, they would say, describing a mother whose devotion was a shield against the growing darkness in her home. The early years of their relationship, while not publicly documented as abusive, held the seeds of what was to come. As time progressed, James began exhibiting increasingly controlling behaviors. What had once seemed like a promising relationship gradually transformed into one marked by power imbalances and intimidation. Friends and family would later recall subtle changes in Michaela's behavior. She became more reserved in his presence and constantly checked her phone when away from him. By early 2021, the situation had deteriorated significantly. James's struggles with drug abuse and infidelity created a volatile environment. The controlling behavior escalated to overt violence, putting Michaela and her children at increasing risk. The breaking point came in May 2021, when James assaulted Michaela with a glass bottle. This attack was a dangerous escalation, moving from psychological manipulation to potentially lethal violence. Recognizing the threat to her safety, Michaela made the courageous decision to seek an order of protection against her husband. Obtaining this legal document was not a simple matter of paperwork. For Michaela, it meant publicly acknowledging the danger in her marriage, a difficult step for many victims of domestic violence. Despite her fear that legal intervention might enrage her abuser, she followed through, securing an order that was meant to keep James away from her and her children. The order was a symbol of her courage, a declaration of her determination to break free from the cycle of abuse. However, the legal document that should have provided safety became merely symbolic. In the months that followed, James repeatedly and brazenly violated the order. He would show up at Michaela's home unannounced, sometimes forcing his way in. Each violation increased Michaela's fear and demonstrated the dangerous limitations of the legal protections available to her. With each breach of the court order, Michaela diligently reported the incidents to authorities, following the proper channels and documenting every unwanted contact. She did everything society asks of domestic violence victims. She left the relationship, obtained legal protection, and reported every violation. Yet the system designed to protect her repeatedly failed to enforce the very orders it had issued. Law enforcement responses to these violations were inconsistent at best. Sometimes officers would arrive after James had already left. Other times, the violations were treated as minor incidents rather than serious breaches of a court order intended to protect a vulnerable person. The pattern became tragically clear. Despite having legal protection on paper, Michaela was essentially left to face her abuser alone. By November 2021, James's violations had become more frequent and more brazen. Michaela lived in a state of constant vigilance, never knowing when he might appear again. She installed additional locks on her doors and windows. She created safety plans with her children. She kept her phone charged and nearby at all times. These were the invisible burdens she carried, the exhausting reality of living under constant threat. What makes Michaela's story so tragic is how predictable its conclusion was to those who understand domestic violence. Research consistently shows that the period after separation is the most dangerous for victims. When abusers lose control, they often escalate their behavior to regain it. Michaela was living through this dangerous period, with each violation of the protective order serving as a clear warning sign of potential escalation. Despite the mounting danger, Michaela continued to seek help through official channels, believing in the system's ability to protect her, even as evidence mounted that it was failing to do so. This was the precarious situation Michaela found herself in by mid-November 2021. Legally separated from her abuser but still very much in danger, with a protection order that existed on paper but offered little actual protection in practice. The stage was set for the final, fatal confrontation that would end her life and expose the systemic failures that allowed it to happen. This was the Michaela her community lost. A daughter of Nashville whose story deserved a different ending. A mother whose fierce protection of her children continued until her final moments. A woman whose name we say not only to mourn her death, but to acknowledge how bravely she fought for her safety. November 15, 2021, began as an ordinary Monday for 24-year-old Michaela Carter. The Nashville mother went about her routine, caring for her children at their home, unaware that the protection order she had obtained against her estranged husband would fail her within hours. By mid-afternoon, Michaela was at home with her children. Court records establish that around 3:45 p.m., James Leggett arrived at her residence. Unlike previous violations of the protection order, this time he immediately proceeded to force entry, kicking repeatedly at the front door until the frame splintered. Inside, Michaela heard the commotion and recognized the danger. She quickly directed her children to safety before grabbing her phone to call 911. The call, later obtained through public records, captured the terror of those moments. The call continued for approximately 4 minutes. During this time, James successfully broke through the door and entered the home. Michaela can be heard saying, "He's in the house now. Please hurry." The dispatcher finally upgraded the call to high priority, but crucial minutes had elapsed. Police records indicate that officers were dispatched at 3:52 p.m., 7 minutes after Michaela's initial call. This delay would later be cited as a critical failure in the emergency response system. As officers were en route, the situation inside the home deteriorated rapidly. At 3:58 p.m., just as the first police cruiser turned onto her street, 2 gunshots rang out from inside the residence. Officers arrived at 4 p.m., 15 minutes after Michaela's initial call. According to the subsequent investigation, some officers turned off their body cameras upon arrival, a critical failure that would later be highlighted in the lawsuit. Police entered the home to find Michaela critically wounded with 2 gunshot wounds, one to the chest and another to the leg. James Leggett was still on the premises and was immediately taken into custody. The police report noted that a handgun was recovered at the scene, later confirmed to be the weapon used in the shooting. Emergency medical services rushed Michaela to Vanderbilt University Medical Center, where surgeons worked to repair the damage caused by the bullets. 4 days, Michaela fought for her life in the intensive care unit. Her mother, Kimberly Jones Mbuyi, maintained a constant vigil at her bedside, joined by other family members. Despite the doctor's best efforts, the damage to her vital organs proved too severe. On November 18, 2021, just 3 days after the shooting and 5 days before what would have been her 25th birthday, Michaela Carter was pronounced dead. In the immediate aftermath, James Leggett was charged with criminal homicide, attempted homicide, aggravated assault, and violating protective orders. He was held on substantial bail while awaiting trial. The case would never reach its conclusion in court, as James Leggett died in prison in July 2024 while still awaiting further proceedings.
And killing his ex-wife in 2021 died in prison this month. James Leggett was convicted for the murder of Michaela Carter. Her murder actually led to her family suing the Metro government of Nashville-Davidson County over officers' handling of her pleas for help against him. Michaela had an order of protection against Leggett November 15, 2021. She and her mom called 911 because Leggett was allegedly outside of a relative's apartment with a gun. They also told responding officers he was still texting her and making threatening social media posts. They asked for him to be arrested for violating the order of protection, but police said they didn't have enough sufficient personal knowledge. About 10 minutes later, Michaela was killed. In February, Metro leaders recommended a $250,000 settlement for her family.
The timeline of November 15th reveals a tragic convergence of failures. a protection order that failed to deter, an emergency response system that didn't recognize the urgency of the situation, and law enforcement protocols that didn't adequately address the known history of violence. The Metro Nashville Police Department's handling of the case came under intense scrutiny. The lawsuit filed by Michaela's mother detailed specific failures: officers turning off body cameras, ignoring calls for immediate help, and not enforcing no-contact orders despite James Leggett's history of violations. Do you think our current systems adequately protect domestic violence victims? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps raise awareness about these critical issues and may help prevent similar tragedies in the future. Kimberly Jones Mbuyi, devastated by her daughter's death, channeled her grief into action. She filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the Metro Nashville Police Department, seeking not only compensation but systemic change. The lawsuit meticulously documented the chain of failures that led to Michaela's death, presenting them not as isolated incidents but as evidence of institutional negligence. The legal complaint specifically alleged that the police department failed to properly respond to Michaela's emergency call with appropriate urgency, enforce the existing protection order despite documented violations, follow departmental protocols regarding body camera usage, provide adequate training to officers responding to domestic violence calls, implement systems to track and respond to protection order violations effectively. These allegations painted a picture of a system that repeatedly failed Michaela despite her doing everything right: obtaining legal protection, reporting violations, and calling for emergency assistance when in danger. Michaela's case is not an isolated incident in Tennessee. Statistics from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation show that domestic violence accounts for approximately 51% of all crimes against persons in the state. More troublingly, research indicates that the presence of a firearm in domestic violence situations increases the risk of homicide by 500%. Despite these statistics, Tennessee's laws regarding firearm restrictions for domestic abusers contain significant loopholes, and enforcement mechanisms remain inadequate. Nashville, specifically, has struggled with implementing comprehensive systems to track protection order violations and coordinate responses between courts, law enforcement, and victim services. A 2020 audit of domestic violence responses in Davidson County found that communication gaps between agencies often left victims vulnerable despite legal protections being in place. The failures exposed by Michaela's case reflect broader issues in how domestic violence is addressed nationwide. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. Protection orders, while an essential tool, are only effective when consistently enforced. Studies show that such orders are violated in up to 2/3 of cases, with less than half of these violations resulting in arrests. Michaela Carter's story illustrates the devastating consequences when systems designed to protect domestic violence victims fail at multiple levels. Her death was not the result of a single mistake, but of a series of institutional shortcomings that allowed a dangerous individual to repeatedly violate legal boundaries without consequence, until it was too late.
Now, overnight, one Metro Council member, Joy Stiles, took the opportunity to personally apologize to the family.
I have faith in our police department, but the officer who failed this woman shouldn't be here anymore, and unfortunately he still is. And whatever can be done for that to be rectified, I promise I will be looking into that. This is a pittance to offer someone for the loss of a life that could have been prevented. And I'm very sorry. Again, ma'am.
Now, as a result of this settlement, changes will also be made following Metro's internal investigation into Miss Carter's death. For example, body cameras will now be on when officers are talking with domestic violence victims.
We also know that the officers must send what's called a rapid or BOLO, be on the lookout message for suspected orders of protection violators that could be out there.
In the wake of Michaela Carter's death, her mother, Kimberly Jones Mbuyi, transformed her grief into purpose. Rather than allowing her daughter to become just another statistic, she emerged as a powerful advocate for domestic violence victims, particularly those failed by the very systems designed to protect them. Through her wrongful death lawsuit against the Metro Nashville Police Department, Mbuyi sought not only justice for Michaela but systemic change that could save other lives. Her advocacy highlighted specific failures in the response to her daughter's case while pushing for broader reforms in how domestic violence is addressed in Nashville and beyond. "My daughter did everything right," Mbuyi stated in a press conference following the filing of the lawsuit. "She got a protection order. She reported violations. She called 911. And still, the system failed her. No other family should have to endure this pain because institutions didn't do their job." Michaela's case illuminates several critical areas where policy changes could prevent similar tragedies. First, protection orders must be enforced with immediate and consistent action. The repeated violations by James Leggett without meaningful consequences illustrates a dangerous gap between legal protection on paper and actual safety for victims. Effective enforcement requires coordination between courts, law enforcement, and victim services to track violations and respond appropriately. When an abuser violates a protection order, the response should be swift and decisive, with consequences that deter future violations. Second, police response and training require significant improvement. The delayed classification of Michaela's 911 call as high priority, despite her clear communication about an armed man violating a protection order, points to deficiencies in dispatcher training. Additionally, the decision by some officers to turn off body cameras at the scene demonstrates a need for stricter protocols and accountability measures. Comprehensive training for all first responders on the dynamics of domestic violence, the lethality of protection order violations, and proper evidence collection is essential. Third, restricting firearm access for domestic abusers must become a priority. James Leggett's possession of a gun despite an active protection order highlights dangerous gaps in enforcement. While federal law prohibits individuals subject to domestic violence protection orders from possessing firearms, implementation varies widely across jurisdictions. Effective policies must include clear procedures for removing weapons when protection orders are issued and consistent verification of compliance. Fourth, victims need holistic support beyond legal protection. Safe housing options, financial assistance, counseling services, and ongoing safety planning are crucial components of a comprehensive approach to domestic violence prevention. Many victims remain in dangerous situations due to economic dependence or lack of alternative housing. Community resources that address these practical needs can empower victims to leave abusive relationships safely. Fifth, community awareness and education play vital roles in prevention. Recognizing early warning signs of abuse, understanding the escalating nature of domestic violence, and knowing how to support victims can save lives. Public education campaigns, school-based prevention programs, and community workshops can help create environments where domestic violence is neither tolerated nor hidden. Finally, accountability in justice systems must be strengthened. Transparent investigations into law enforcement failures, consistent application of consequences for protection order violations, and regular audits of domestic violence response protocols can help identify and address systemic weaknesses before they result in tragedy. For viewers moved by Michaela's story, there are concrete ways to support domestic violence prevention. Educate yourself about the warning signs of domestic violence and available resources. Support local domestic violence shelters and advocacy organizations through donations or volunteering. Contact elected officials to advocate for stronger domestic violence laws and better funded services. Believe and support survivors who disclose abuse. Speak up when you witness concerning behaviors in relationships. Share information about domestic violence resources on social media. The tragedy of Michaela Carter's death reveals how even when victims take all the right steps to protect themselves, systemic failures can have fatal consequences. Her story is not just about what went wrong, but about what must change to prevent future deaths. Michaela was more than a victim. She was a mother, a daughter, a community member whose life mattered and whose death demands accountability. Through remembering her story and advocating for change, we honor her legacy and work toward a world where protection orders truly protect, where systems respond effectively to cries for help, and where domestic violence is met with swift and certain consequences. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share to help us continue telling these important stories. Your engagement helps ensure these narratives reach those who need to hear them most. Both victims seeking support and policymakers with the power to implement change. Say her name. Michaela Carter.